Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of MEIEA Meets. My name is Armen Shaomian, and I am the president of MEIEA, the Music and Entertainment Industry Educators Association. MEIEA will be hosting its annual summit virtually this year, and it will be free of cost to all MEIEA members. So please save the dates for October 2nd and 3rd this fall for research presentations, keynotes, panels, roundtables, and more. We are also offering a free year of academic membership to all current and new members who teach in higher education. All that information will be emailed to you after this session. You can also visit MEIEA.org or send me an email directly at president@MEIEA.org if you have any questions or suggestions. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this meeting will be recorded for archiving purposes, as well as posted on our YouTube channel, so that those members that are unable to attend can still access the resources and conversations shared during this session. Today's topic will focus on the future of live music during a pandemic. So I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Eric Holt, who is a MEIEA board member and an assistant professor of music business at Belmont University. Eric?
Thank you, Armen. This topic obviously is a broad one, so we're gonna dive in pretty quick. We have four distinguished guests that are experts in their field, in my view anyway. And I'm gonna do a quick introduction of kind of where they work and what they do, and then we're gonna get into the discussion. Later on, you'll get a link with their bios and LinkedIn information to learn more about them individually. First, I would like to introduce Jessica Gordon. She's the co-founder of IPA, the Independent Promoters Alliance, and Broadberry Entertainment Group. She is a co-owner there. I would also like to introduce Julie Greenberg, who's an agent at CAA. And I would also like to introduce Shlomo Lipetz. He's the vice president of programming at City Winery up in New York, but he oversees all the programming for all the city wineries nationally. And then finally, Chris Cobb, Exit In, Hurry Back owner, and listed on some of the information, it says NIVA, a lobbying committee chair, but he's actually the Southern Precinct captain. So I'm gonna start off with you, Cobb, because I know you have been involved from kind of a 30,000 foot angle as far as the bigger picture on how can we help and assist independent venues and promoters stay in business. We know that COVID has decimated the industry for live music, for both promoters and independent and even some larger venues. And so this legislation with Congress currently is an attempt to try to help some of those parties. I know it's the Save Our Stages Act and the Restart Act. Can you tell us a little bit how that came about and how NIVA was formed?
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to see all y'all today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about NIVA and the federal lobbying efforts that we have been so heavily engaged in over the course of the last few months. So briefly, NIVA was started early on, maybe third week of March, early into the pandemic, really out of a handful of people calling each other and texting and colleagues and friends trying to navigate early on. That quickly evolved into a weekly Zoom through Moderator, the New York publicity firm, who had started Independent Venue Week 3 years ago, an initiative to bring independent venues together for a round of shows each summer. That ballooned into hundreds of attendees pretty quickly. And over the course of the next week or so, the organization was formalized with the election of a board and jumped right into the lobbying efforts federally. As you know, all those people, the founders and original members of NIVA knew then, and as most of us know now, concerts, the live side of our industry, are decimated and will be so into next year. I don't know how long into next year, no one knows, but it's not a good outlook currently. And so we know and feel that we have to receive financial aid and support to get the independents who there are so many of, over 2,500 NIVA members now, which really just includes venues and promoters, but there are so many agents and managers, producers of events, additionally, tens of thousands of us across the country who are unlikely for our businesses to see the other side of this pandemic if we don't receive some financial support. So yeah, so we jumped right in. We hired Aiken Gump, the biggest lobbying firm in DC, and have been executing a massive grassroots effort to move legislation through Congress that will help us. So specifically, the Save Our Stages Act that you mentioned that's our Hail Mary, if you will. That is an industry-specific bailout bill that was written by Senator John Cornyn, a Republican senator from Texas, who has been very supportive of our efforts from day one. Congress is in the throes of negotiating and hopefully will pass soon legislation that helps so many Americans that are in need, individuals and businesses. Right now we feel like, we feel positive that SOS has a chance of being included in a package that could pass Congress as early as next week. The Restart Act is the other big piece of legislation that we have pushed that has a lot of bipartisan support that could also make its way into a package, a bill that passes that would be helpful. That is a loan program. It is basically a better version, from my perspective, of the PPP program that would provide support. But the big differences are that's a loan bill, that's debt. It is open to more than just the music industry, whereas SOS is a bailout package that's grant money that is industry specific that would be available if passed to talent agents, comedy clubs, government-owned buildings, which is huge and been helpful in our efforts of supporting the legislation, promoters, producers, and of course, music venues. So what can be done right now? Go to saveourstages.com and email your legislators is the biggest thing that any individual can do to help us support both pieces of legislation.
Very good. So one direct question, do you think if the Save Our Stages Act were to be passed, would it actually help these venues, or will it just sustain the inevitable?
It feels pretty good, man. We've been trying to piecemeal it together, most of us, through a little bit of PPP money that we may have been able to access, some state funding that's out there in certain places, private funding, live streams, merch. Like, everybody's desperately trying to scrape together enough revenue each month to pay the fixed overhead, which for venues specifically is extremely high, even when we're closed. $10 billion is the number in the SOS package, which is a lot of money, but also not a lot at the same time. So that's a rounding error when you're talking trillions, which Congress is. So it's not a lot of money from that perspective. But when you're looking at 10,000 or so potential eligible businesses across the country, it's a lot of money. So based on NIVA's extrapolation and Senator Cornyn's determination of that number, that's who got to the 10 billion, we feel pretty strongly that it would get most eligible businesses well into 2021, which is, from my perspective as Exit's owner, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure I have enough cash in accounts that we can pay our bills really until this time next year.
Gotcha. So I'm going to move on to Jessica as the co-founder of the Independent Promoters Alliance. The risk for promoters, I'm a promoter as well, is a little bit different from venue owners during this time. But the IPA was formed along the same lines. A lot of promoters nationally were getting together because some of the same issues amongst all of us regarding ticketing and refunds and some of the companies that we're kind of forced to work with as independent concert promoters. Jessica, can you give your view from a promoter and from the organization standpoint? What are some of the trends you're seeing regarding ticketing, and what are some of the issues?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. As Eric mentioned, I'm one of the two co-founders of the Independent Promoter Alliance. I also own a promotion company for the last 17 years that's based out of Richmond, Virginia, and books all over Virginia, Washington, D.C., and West Virginia, called Broadberry Entertainment Group. And I'm also an English professor at Virginia Commonwealth University here in Richmond. The Independent Promoter Alliance was something that my colleague and partner in that project, Dave Poe, and I had talked about for some time prior to COVID. We had just thrown around ideas and had like a smaller group formed that was sort of moving in this larger direction. And when the pandemic began, it just gave us the perfect opportunity to have some time to further develop it. But more so, it was the right time for everyone because everybody in the industry was looking for unity and discussion and to better understand what other people were doing as we tried to help ourselves and each other. So right around the beginning of the pandemic, Eventbrite, which about 2/3 of our members were signed with, announced, I think we all found out one day through a Billboard article, that they had laid off around, I think it was, forgive me, it's been a while to remember the exact percentage, but something like 80% of their staff had been laid off in the music sector. So that was very alarming to us because they had all of our money. Just speaking for my own company, they had almost $100,000 in sales. And that is true in bigger numbers for many other companies out there. So one of the first projects that the IPA worked on was to reach out to, I reached out to Julia Hartz, who's the CEO of Eventbrite, and set up a Zoom meeting between her and all of the IPA members who wanted to attend, so that we could politely ask some questions about the future of Eventbrite. So the main concern here is that, I think all promoters and the ticketing company, everyone agrees that the money that's being held by a ticketing company is the money of the consumer, right? Of the ticket holder or the attendee of the event. What we were not agreeing on is who would be best equipped to hold that money throughout the pandemic or for however long it was going to be. At that point, we weren't sure if we were talking about 3 weeks or 3 months or a year and a half. We just had no idea because this was, I think, like late March when this happened. So we reached out to her and we set up a Zoom meeting. Dave and I moderated that. So we solicited a number of questions from all of the IPA members. They had a lot of overlap, largely just what's going to happen with your company? How will we get in touch with you? How will we, will we be able to get our money? Can we leave Eventbrite and go to another company? Because we were all in contracts with them. So we set up this Zoom meeting. It was interesting. It went well, I guess. But at the same time, I think that a lot of people left the meeting still feeling like they weren't exactly clear on what the future would hold with Eventbrite. I know that a lot of promoters have since been able to break their contracts and have left Eventbrite. Speaking for myself, this was just a coincidence, but we had actually signed with a different ticketing company, and that contract was to begin 1 week after the pandemic started. So once we were all completely closed down, we had to switch to a new ticketing company. And there were a lot of challenges with starting with a new company during that time as well. To my knowledge, the vast majority of the staff at Eventbrite was laid off, but we, still having had a lot of ticket money held through them, have not personally had any trouble or have had little trouble, reaching them and being able to get answers and get the deposits for it. We have had some stumbling blocks that have been frustrating. I know that a lot of people lost their sales rep there and then had no contact. And that's, as you can imagine, very scary for people. So the big concern, I think, to get back to your question about like what's happening with ticketing companies, the big concern back in March and April was like, are they going to survive? Some of the smaller ones, there were a lot of questions around those. Some of the larger ones, we weren't really sure what would happen. At this point, it seems like, at least for now, things are somewhat stable. If this goes on, through next summer, next fall, even longer, some people are saying, we don't really know. Just like a venue or a promoter, ticketing companies have lost all their revenue and income. So it is, it is a difficult time for everyone.
Yes, it is. So I was on a call with one of our clients, the Schermerhorn Symphony Center here in Nashville, and an interesting statistic came out of that call, and they said that almost 40% of the ticket holders contributed their ticket to the Schermerhorn to support the venue. Have you seen that as a trend with any of the promoters inside the network?
I have heard from a lot of promoters that they've had people, donate their ticket money rather than asking for a refund. I haven't personally seen a trend with that at all. That's just me, though. I've had very few people want to do that or agree to do that. We also haven't pushed it very hard here. We've been looking at other alternate revenue streams, but I have heard that from a number of promoters where they were able to set up an option that said, this show's been canceled, we're going to give you back your money, but if you wanted to donate it to the venue to help us survive, you can do that. And some people have gotten a pretty good response, I think.
Shlomo or Cobb, have you experienced that in the venues? Tickets being donated back to the venue?
Well, we definitely asked. We, for City Winery, it's a little different. We actually own our own ticketing system. So it actually even complicated it even more because the money of the tickets was so embedded in the business. It definitely took 3 or 4 months of very frustrated customers, but we eventually were able to return most of the money. As far as the donation, we're lucky to be a restaurant in a functioning winery. So we were offering people 120% of the face value of the ticket in product. And we pushed people to do credit. So yeah, when we found actually more people than I expected have allowed us to keep their money. Nevertheless, it's it's a massive exposure. I mean, I think we had close to 1,000 shows on sale when this happened, and some states have regulations, like the state of New York, that if you postpone a show for more than 12 months, you're forced to return the money.
Right.
Whereas some states allow you, if you're rescheduling a show, to still keep the money. It really depends on the kind of small print in the law and also in every venue's fine print.
Right. And I noticed through some of the conversations inside of MEIEA, depending on what state you're in, you'll have harder issues on that topic. Shlomo, I wanted to ask you specifically, you sit in an interesting seat because you have somewhat of a national view representing City Winery, and there are, 6 to 8 city wineries now? How many are there total now?
We're in 7 markets, seven states.
Okay, and so you have to kind of look at it from a broader standpoint. What trends have you seen from that position, from live streaming to other alternatives? What has worked for you guys? What hasn't?
Well, to touch on the 7 market kind of observation, I mean, the one clear thing is that there's no patterns. I mean, that's part of the problem of really not having a kind of direct oversight from the federal government. So it varies state to state, even within the state, city to city. We all know here Tennessee and Nashville contradicting their policies, Georgia and Atlanta contradicting their policies, Massachusetts and Boston. So, and then of course, just from just another layer of complexity, every single building is in a different circumstances. Some we own and the negotiation is with our lender and our mortgage. Some are with our landlords, and every single landlord, every single property has a different landlord. So for a long time, and really throughout most of this pandemic, first 4 months, we were trying to kind of do what a lot of businesses who had the option to do, is really trying to mid-air convert our business and not do live music, but really try to focus on retail wine, which was never something that was in our core of our business, and do takeout food. Now, I like to pride myself as having a great burger for a music venue, but is it a burger that I salivate and, you know, just can't wait to order online? Probably not. Same with the risotto balls or any other parcel of food. So for a long time, in anticipation that we may be opening up in some capacity in September or even in August, we kind of kept the business going, doing some live streams, not overkilling it, because again, we brought down our team to a really small team, and we focused on only paid streams, and with various success. Let's put it this way: even if we take the most successful stream we've done, which is 4,000 tickets at $10, that doesn't even get close to cover a 30,000 square foot, you know, property, and it doesn't come close to really supporting any type of staff. So in some cases, like in Nashville, just to give you some insight on the mathematics, if we are completely closed, we let everyone go and we just lock the doors with the exception of our winemaker, we're losing between $50,000 and $60,000 a month, every month. So for us, it's okay, well, can we somehow open up in any capacity? And we try to do some indoor reduced capacity, over the top, you know, health measures and self-distance and testing and all that. And that failed. We're trying to convert, doing some outdoor shows in a massive tent in our parking lot. It's really not even about making money. It's can we lose less money somehow? You know, if we could lose $45,000 a month in a property instead of 50, in this harsh reality, that's a win, right? But so we've been trying to do a lot of stuff. We're lucky to have a infrastructure and a company with a lot of great resources, and we're able to apply some of the stuff that we're learning in other markets, which I think eventually when we do reopen, and as a 300 seated venue, we hope to be some of the first venues to open in some capacity. So I think sharing that wealth of knowledge and opening procedures and being able to apply for money on a consistent basis, I really am concerned for a lot of venues that just don't have the resources to tap into it. I mean, Chris is lucky. I mean, he's on it, and he's proactive, and he's kind of in the nucleus of all of it. But there's so many venues and art centers that don't have the resources to apply fast enough. They don't have the resources to open up safely. And I think one thing is for sure, and I'm sure Julie could attest to it, if we want touring to come back, it's not about City Winery coming back or just Exit In. You need a whole slew of venues to be open and open responsibly and know what they're doing, because if an artist starts touring and they played City Winery, they're safe, then they play another City Winery, then they play another venue, that ruins everything for everyone. So really one of the biggest takeaways from NIVA, just going back again to NIVA, is their willingness and ability to share those resources with everyone is absolutely key for whatever is in the other side of this. And not even to talk about the second level of challenges, which is, okay, let's say everyone is in agreement that we could come back. Will the fans come back? Will we do, as venues, as promoters, a good job in ensuring their safety? Or will we kind of open up, and it's going to be, you know, one venue is going to be downtown Nashville, and one venue is going to be like in the Hamptons chain smokers fiasco. Those things set us back a lot, not only from state regulations, but also from consumer safety and consumer confidence, which is a big part of that second half.
And that consumer confidence is a huge element to all of this. In my discussion with Julie on yesterday, we talked some about that, and we actually talked about the chain smokers event. And that kind of segues into Julie's question. Julie, what do you think is going to take for both artists to feel comfortable coming back on stages and the consumers to get over instances like the chain smokers incident? And you can speak briefly about the chain smokers incident because you know a lot about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's a two-part question, obviously, but just to give a general sum up of the chain smokers event, I mean, these drive-in concepts and concerts across the U.S. have been happening, you know, ever since the beginning of the pandemic in early March, and we saw that with like Mark Revelia and like a bunch of different artists, and you know, it's kind of interesting too when you look back and see the early drive-in shows and you know how they produced them then versus now are almost identical to what I've, you know, on proposals I've seen. It's just, I think ever since the Chase Rice moment, there was now this, you know, attention to detail as like, wow, these really aren't as safe as we thought they were. Even though back in March, they were doing the exact same thing and people, again, just like didn't really talk about it. And now they're, you know, obviously getting a ton of press and bad press being that, but I will say for the Chainsmokers event, and it's controversial, of course, but the way it was booked and presented to us as, you know, it was a private event for Goldman Sachs and, you know, all of the, you know, the promoter who booked it had every, you know, good intention. It was thorough. They worked with the local government, the state government. It was very much, you know, controlled to the extent that they thought it would be, right? And they, you know, everything on paper looked like it would be perfect to the best of its ability. It abided by the CDC guidelines. It abided by everything that, you know, the local and state governments said, you know, they need to abide by. So I think also, and Eric, to what we were talking about as well, there was this VIP area, which is the scene that you see, the image that like kind of blew out of proportion because that VIP area that these people sold like $15,000-$20,000 tickets for that specific area. It was still congregating in groups of 10 and they were, you know, it was supposed to be a little bit more lax of an experience. And just from the optics of the picture, that's really what you're seeing is these people really close together. But if you read the press and people talking that were actually there in attendance saying, I felt really safe. Every 5-10 minutes, they were cleaning the porta potties. There was hand sanitizer, you know, obviously the masks weren't required, but if, you know, it was there as an option. And if you felt personally like you needed to wear one, all that to say, I think as much as you put red tape around it to say that this is going to be safe and these are the protocols that we're going to follow, at the end of the day, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do when they're down and seeing people they haven't seen in 3 months and they have a couple cocktails in them and they're like, hey, I'm going to walk over to the next pod. And that's what you're starting to see. So I'm kind of in the position of like, I don't think these drive-in concerts are safe as much as people they want to say that they are. Like, unless you are actually confined to your vehicle and cannot leave the vehicle, you really can't control people without physically removing them. And I think that that's an issue in and of itself. And also, how can you control hundreds and hundreds of people? I mean, I think the Chainsmokers show had like thousands almost between, you know, ebb and flow throughout the night. So yeah, I mean, back to your original question in terms of like artists feeling comfortable and when fans are going to feel comfortable, I'm in the position of really until we have a vaccine in place, how can you really regulate this? I mean, even if you're going to open up venues and social distance, at the end of the day, it's so difficult to control an individual without physically removing them, which I think that that's what we're going to have to come down to. I think that even if we open up at half capacity, if someone is, if you're not telling them to wear a mask inside, and you have to stand 6 feet apart and they decide not to do that, I think it needs to be the same as if someone gets in a fight in your venue, you have the option to remove them from the venue. I think that's what it's going to have to ultimately come down to, because people, I think depending on the age demographic, I think the younger people obviously are very eager to get out of their houses. They're already getting together in larger gatherings than 10 people. You see all these pictures of people at the beach. You see all these pictures of people, you know, congregating in mass groups. I think from a consumer perspective, it's all about the demographic. And again, I think the younger people are just so hungry to be surrounded by people and have that feeling of normalcy again, that they're not thinking in the back of their mind that, you know, this is still an issue, which is the largest issue of it all, right? Like, that's the problem. But, and then also in terms of the artists, like, it's going to come down to the artists, because some, as we're seeing, are very comfortable going out and doing shows right now. And that's not because they're money hungry. I think people, you know, that's a profession and that's something they've built their whole careers around, and that's something that they're yearning for. But it's such a gray area and so complicated when, you know, the solution should be, unfortunately, we just have to keep holding off on doing any sort of show, because every time an event happens, it's another setback. And that's what is another issue. And I think the drive-in concepts are also a setback, to be quite honest. So.
And you know, I've had that conversation with several people in the industry that the drive-in concept is definitely questionable, but that leads us to the idea and the thought process regarding online stream shows and even digital shows like Fortnite and Travis Scott. And this question is for the whole group. Anyone can jump in and respond. What do you foresee the future of streaming shows and or the advancement of technology like the Fortnite show that Travis Scott executed so successfully?
I can jump in really quick. I think that the streaming shows, even when real shows come back into, you know, we're back into this normalcy, I think they're still going to exist. And I think that they're still going to be, you know, they're an easy solution for artists that, you know, you can just put something up in your house. And, you know, there's so many different platforms now. It's not just the Fortnite concept. I think that's a rarity. No, there's not a lot of artists that can produce what Travis Scott did. And even what The Weeknd's going to be doing with TikTok, I think that those are at such a high level production. But I do think that it's really impressive to see all these platforms come to fruition. And I think that they're going to continue. And I think that we're going to see, you know, a mix between the live and virtual existing in conjunction with another, even when live shows are back. I think that there's going to be the streaming component now, because, you know, for someone that doesn't live in Nashville proper, you know, if they want to tune into an Exit-In show and they may not be able to drive 2 hours to go there, I think a lot of artists are now going to offer that virtual, you know, they can tune in virtually, even though they're there live in person, and there's also people in the crowd. I think that they're going to exist together. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I think it's also a way for artists to make more money, promoters to make more money, because if you're selling tickets as well as live in person and virtual, like, you can double, triple, I mean, it's limitless. So I think that it's kind of cool to see the technology really emerge through this. And like I said, I really think that this VR and the virtual component is going to continue to exist like years down the road. And there's going to be so many, like, you know, shows where it's 2-in-1 sort of thing.
Right. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that you had some of these trends kind of popping up before the pandemic. You have like Matt Heath of Trivium doing his live streaming on Twitch, where he would practice guitar and do songwriting and do recording and things like that on stream for people. And you had other people that were doing live streams of remixes of music. That was occurring on Twitch before the pandemic. So I think that we actually had a precursor to a trend, and that possibly the pandemic could just be accelerating this. We know that live performers have been doing things like recording shows and selling the recordings of shows immediately after to ticket holders. It feels like we were just on the cusp of this immediate delivery of content to people who couldn't be there. And maybe the pandemic has given us a chance to move forward those kind of concepts to go somewhere different.
What type of investment are some of the venues, City Winery or Chris, what type of investments are you guys making in that thought, moving forward with this trend that's probably going to happen regardless of the COVID or not?
I can go. Yeah, super interesting subject matter here, right? Like, as an industry, we mostly pushed back against streaming technology for the last decade or more. And I think, the pandemic has forced that levee to break, if you will. And so out of necessity, there's mass adoption right now. And I agree with Julie. I don't think it's going anywhere now that it was coming anyway. And in a minute, when we're done here, I'm going to run over and open up the club for a podcast, which reading through his notes this morning, he referred to the pandemic as the great accelerator. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, we're seeing acceleration of things that were coming anyway, in my opinion. The economics of it are interesting. On a lot of levels, they're interesting. Long-term, short-term, it's certainly not going to save any clubs. Like Shlomo mentioned, the overhead. I mean, we can't scratch the surface of making the kind of revenue we need without packing people in closely. But from the exit end perspective, we have invested in streaming, and we've turned our limited resources. Again, our resources are so limited right now. So, we have to decide what we're going to focus our time and our energy and our money on, because we have less of all of those things than we ever have. So, when Nashville went to phase 3 and we could have opened at extremely restricted capacity, we chose not to even spin our wheels on that, and we continued focusing on streaming at that moment. And then, that rug was pulled 2 weeks later, and Nashville moved backwards as it needed to, and we are now mandated 100% closed again. So as far as the investment is concerned, it's like a $10,000 deal, basically, give or take, to outfit a club with the necessary equipment. And then you have the delivery. So how are you going to provide this content to the people who want to watch it? So it's not, it's not a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's a, when you're bleeding cash every month, it's $10,000 is real money. So I think that's the biggest hurdle probably in streaming right now for mass adoption on a club level. And, my advice to all those VC folks and all those folks jumping in with both feet into streaming is to invest. Spend the money now if you want the market share in the future.
I don't share the same opinion as my esteemed colleagues here on the future of streaming per se. And first of all, we're definitely investing in this infrastructure. I mean, we are going to announce this week on a really massive partnership with a leading streaming company that is actually going to be doing the capital investment in the hardware, which is going to be a massive relief for us. And we're definitely planning to use in the kind of short to medium term our venues as a studio. It definitely increases the production quality and production level. And I think it's much more justifiable to charge a $10, $15, $20 with a multi-track, multi-camera, beautiful setup than someone in their living room. That there seems to be some type of fatigue in that regards. But people forget streaming has been existing for a long time. Anywhere from, the founder of City Winery, Michael Dorf, starting the kind of digital club streaming concept, over 25 years ago, streaming from Knitting Factory in Amsterdam to New York and New York to LA. And I think we've all been bunkering down for 4 months and forgetting that what a great experience it is to be outdoor and with people. So will it be nice to have a stream where, 30, 40, 50 people buy tickets at low ticket price who may not be able to make it? But I'll just use example. The market is not going to be that big. So let's say the Milk Carton Kids play in Nashville. They're on a tour, like we're talking post-COVID. I don't see how any agent or venue is going to agree to do a stream so someone in Atlanta could watch the show in Nashville if the next night they're playing in Atlanta. That takes away from ticket sales, right? I mean, I think the post-COVID, I don't see any streamings that are not going to be geo-targeted and geo-restricted in that regard. So it's going to be nice. It's going to be hopefully, what I hope is some kind of additional money for the artist. We actually see the investment of the setup being more lucrative for our private event department, being able to, for international conferences and national events. I think it's less likely they're going to invest in traveling, and maybe there's some opportunities over there. And we're going to do it, and we're going to make it look as good as possible. But I'm not quitting my day job and moving into the streaming business. And like Julie said, the everyone's in the industry is throwing these kind of Travis Scott and this and that, where there's one cases. I mean, we're talking about thousands of artists that are barely scratching on these streams, 50 people, 40 people, 80 people. When we do a multi-market marketing for a city winery stream, CWTV, we have over 800,000 people on our email list. We only go with artists that could sell at least 300 tickets. Some of these artists sell multiple nights in each market, and we're selling 120, 130 tickets virtually. And this is without anything else playing anywhere. Super branded city winery, show that's recorded specifically for city winery. That's a return. And we're during a pandemic. What's going to happen when everyone could go out and experience live music again? And that's why the people on this call is because people want to experience the live music. They want to indulge their senses, as we say at City Winery. So I'm a little more skeptic. We're doing it. I think it's going to be nice additional content, assuming that we could change some of the archaic artists' rights and ruin some of these stuff that we're doing that you can't show who owns the music and all that stuff, and that those same exact regulations have been existing for way too long. And of course, not a surprise, the labels are the last to change.
Those are very interesting and good points. Go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, no, I mean, I was just going to say, I tend to agree with you, Shlomo, that, I mean, that's something that I thought about with streaming before, is that it's all fine and well when a tour is selling out. But if I have a show coming up, like let's say it's a year from now and things are normal again, I have a show coming up and it's not selling and I stand to lose a lot of money, and I'm hearing about all these people buying tickets to watch a live stream the night before of the same artist, I'm going to feel really angry about that. That's not, I just can't imagine that going over. I can see it working if a tour is selling out, then great, like that works wonderful. Like that to me makes a lot of sense. I think it's going to have to be like a case by case basis that like people are feeling out as we like figure out how to better integrate live streaming in. Can I also go back to something we were talking about, or Julie was talking about a minute ago? Is that okay if I revert? So I wanted to respond about the drive-ins. So like, I definitely personally fall on the extremely cautious side of COVID, like didn't leave my house for 3 months at the beginning, had lots of concerns about, live music at all. We've done 2 drive-ins and we just announced our 3rd yesterday, which was Marcus King, and we have 2 more confirmed and 7 or 8 more in the works. I feel like our first two went so well. Like we didn't have and people are allowed out of their cars and they can sit, you know, in a lawn chair adjacent to their car. They can't leave that area unless they're going to the restroom. They have to wear a mask if they're going to the restroom. We literally had zero problems at both. The last one was about 800 people. Just like we didn't even have to tell anyone to please go back to their cars. And I expected it to be like what I'm seeing. And I just wonder if a lot of what's going on is that the press only covers the really bad things that happen. There's no coverage of like the good drive-ins where there's no problems. And I wonder if most of them, I mean, I'm in contact with a lot of promoters through the IPA who are doing these, and I'm not hearing about, there are some issues I've heard about, but nothing like what I've seen in the media. And I wonder if that's part of what's going on and that they're getting a bad name because, like, sure, some of them haven't gone well. I also think that you have to be really careful about the genre that you're booking. I think it works well with a bluegrass show. I don't think it would work well with a punk show. I think you have to be really conscious and cognizant of that when you're doing it. But I feel like, I mean, for me, this last one that we did as people were leaving, the amount of people that like stopped and like rolled their window down as they were leaving to say to me, thank you so much for doing this. It just was like, made me feel like I was doing like the first good thing that I've done since all of this began, and like bringing an opportunity for some kind of culture back to the city that I live in. And I think that's really important. If there's some way to have arts and culture, over the next year for people, and it's safe, and the safety is honestly the most important thing to me, then I think it's a really good thing to do. And I think kind of like the streaming, we've all just got to figure out like how it can work, sooner rather than later.
There is a way to do it right. Absolutely. I mean, we're doing some stuff and we know, I could say with absolute confidence, not even blinking, that we're doing it right. It's the instability and the inability of the city to police it or to kind of regulate it. It's the inability to have everyone who's doing it to have enough resources. I mean, Julie, I appreciate what you're doing to protect the chain smokers. That whole event stunk from 5 miles away. How it was approved, how it was done, how it was organized. I mean, the fact that there was drive-ins makes no sense to me. You're forcing people to be in the smallest space possible and have them stay in a car, strangers or people that are not living in the same household. That doesn't make any sense. But and as far as genre, yes, I agree. I mean, from my perspective, City Winery's perspective, our genre, you're not going to have people mosh pitting, but it's a little hard to kind of say, well, punk rock, no, folk, yes, singer-songwriter, yes, but there's no, you need a much more regulatory process to assure a safe concert. But I do think the same way with any other business. We can't, I think our approach of just bunkering in the house and not doing anything is not sustainable. We have to find a way to get out, to inject some money and energy into the economy and to do it right. And it's ultimately within all of us and personal responsibilities and culture. And I could tell you from in New York, everyone's wearing a mask no matter what. If you're not wearing a mask, you feel wrong and bad for not wearing a mask because everyone is wearing one. Other places, it comes down to every single person's personal responsibility to be responsible. And unfortunately that it's not going to happen.
So, I mean, I think the consistent thing here is safety, and everyone can agree on that, is that how do you translate this art and culture in a safe way? The last 10 minutes here, I want to open it up to the other guests here on Zoom. If you have any questions for the panelists.
I've got one. Hi, I'm Gloria, and I teach at Middle Tennessee State University. I teach live entertainment courses, and students are scared. They're backtracking their passion about wanting to be in live entertainment because they're seeing what's happening. They're hearing 2022. They are not sure and certain if they're going to have a career in it, if they're going to find a job. Finding a job in music business, as you know, is difficult by itself. And so, other than just continuing to teach them the aspects of management and concert promotion and talent agency, I don't know what to tell them. Like, I don't know. I tried to encourage them to stay the course and you know, if that's their passion, because we know it's coming back. We just don't know what it's going to look like because we've not been here before. You know, the September 2001 didn't take us here. The recession of 2008 didn't take us here. So we're in different times. So those of you that are running venues and are promoters and agents, like, I know you've had to lay people off. What are you telling your people as far as, you know, hang in there, I'll bring you back? Or what do you tell a 19, 20-year-old who came into a program with the desire to be an agent, to be a venue manager, to be a concert promoter or a tour manager, and now is second guessing, should they go over to publishing even though they don't want to work in publishing?
Don't go.
You could say don't go, but mama's saying, hey, you need a job when you graduate.
Right. I'll let the panelists answer.
That might be the most difficult question I've heard in a long time.
You're welcome.
Well, everyone in the panel here is a old fart, including myself. So, you know, the young kids are probably going to think of something creative to do. There are opportunities. There's going to be live music again. From the agency side, I think it's actually going to be a golden age for agencies because all these agents are representing artists and they're going to just break down to what it was, you know, 15 years ago, these mom and pop agencies. So in a way, they may actually be able to be an agent without being an intern for 15 years. So, or an assistant, you know, so there's going to be a lot of opportunities. It's like me going through the process in my head. Where do I want to go on vacation? I just want to escape. Now is not the time to make some serious decisions about career. Let it settle down. That would be my best, you know, we don't know how it's going to be. We just know that live music is going to be back. And someone's going to have to represent that artist, and someone's going to have to host that artist, and someone's going to have to drive that artist from city to city, and someone's going to have to take care of their water and hospitality. And, you know, so there's all these positions are going to exist in some capacity. And of course, all the things that we're not even thinking about, that they're going to come out of this.
That's such great advice. That's such great advice. You know, that's such great. I love that, Shlomo. Thank you. Yeah. So like drop down to a minimum number of courses so that you have more time to hone your artistic skills, then take the gap year. And then when you're done with all that, it's going to be the golden age. That's what I'd tell them. I'm
gonna quote you on that to them.
Yeah, I think if I were in the position, you know, and just so I can give a frame of reference too, because I get that question. It is a very tough question, but I get it a lot because at CAA, I book universities across the United States. So I'm talking to college students every single day, all these concert committee members who are seniors that, you know, had to unfortunately cancel their big spring event and make it virtual. And, you know, some actually like had accepted jobs already to work at CAA, and, you know, we're about to graduate and like jump right into it. And then, you know, pandemic hit. So unfortunately that start date that they were going to have come May, June after graduation got pushed to July, then got pushed to August. And then, you know, unfortunately we had CAA actually went through a round of furloughs and layoffs last week, which was, you know, I commend us for, you know, keeping everyone on as long as we actually did. We were the last agency to actually go through it. But I think, you know, what I've been telling young people who call me and ask, you know, what do I do next? And especially for those that wanted to be in the live touring business and didn't want to work for a label or didn't want to work for a publishing company. You know, since so many people aren't hiring right now, I think, you know, finding an artist that you're super passionate about. And I think going the management route for a little bit is really the only creative way to kind of stay in someone's life. And then hopefully as companies are able to hire people on, you know, now they have this experience and have been working with an artist, not on the live front, but they've been, you know, finding ways to really try to propel an artist through this pandemic, whether that be digitally or, just trying to break them on social media or things like that, but just learning like how to properly promote as you can without having, live shows. I think that that's kind of like what I would probably do in the position, is just really, you're not going to probably make any money. So trying to find a restaurant job on the side, or like drive for Uber or dog walking or something that, actually can pay the bills. But I think that's a good way to just learn and sort of start business. And then if you do want to go the corporate route, or whenever companies can start hiring people, you now have this sort of experience. And whether it would be, it's not what you're first envisioning, but at least it's kind of your first taste into the industry, and really just starting to network. And I find myself a lot of the days right now, even talking with a lot of publishers and people that I maybe not have communicated with as much, just really networking, because to Shlomo's point, like, live music is coming back. It's just a matter of time. None of us on this call have the crystal ball as to when, and we're all obviously trying to rush to find the best safety protocols and measurements to get it back as soon as possible. But it's inevitable. It will be coming. And those artists are going to be more eager than ever to get back on the road. And so at least from the agency front, I think this is the only time where we're not out at shows every single night. We're not flying on airplanes left and right, going across the world, trying to just continue, to be at our client shows. Like, we're at home, we are at our computers. It's the best time to just network. So if I were in college, I would just be honestly trying to fill a Rolodex. So when things are back in motion, I have this person I talk to, this person, and now I can actually, hopefully grow a business that's normal again, So
I'm doing the same thing. I don't think 80% of the people that I network for 12 years are probably just thrown out the window, probably going to be doing something else. So I'm starting from scratch.
True. Michelle, did you have a question?
I did. Wow, you picked up on that. That was quick. What, I just unmute for a second a long time ago and you saw it. Yeah, I'm also from MTSU. And I wonder, this goes back to the early part of this conversation. So I'm sorry to do that to us, because I think Gloria's question was awesome. But I'm wondering if you could describe a little bit of the relationship between, we talked about a couple of organizations that have been founded to support promoters in this time and lobby on their behalf. And of course, on the agency side, there's NIVA, which was founded to sort of represent independent agents. I'm wondering if those feel collaborative or competitive. Like, are you going after the same money? And is it all a federal effort? Are there local efforts happening in these organizations to support the promoters? And I'm not trying to find out if there's a fight. I'm just trying to understand organizationally what the dynamics are.
Yeah,
if you guys have opinions on that.
That's a really good question, and there's actually a really simple answer to it. The work, NIVA is a 501c6. NIVA is doing amazing work with lobbying. IPA is a 501c3. We expressly cannot do any lobbying, and that's not our purpose. We're a professional organization, just like the professional organizations that exist within each discipline in education. So like our mission statement is about education for promoters and like long-term sustainability. We do not do any lobbying at all. I think that's the best answer and the primary difference. I don't know, what would you say, Chris?
Yeah, totally. And just to add to that, NIDO that you mentioned, Michelle, and NIVA are working hand in hand on the lobbying efforts, are both supporting the exact same legislation. And furthermore, I certainly have not ever seen anything that comes anywhere near the amount of collaboration that is now taking part within our industry. I mean, this is a highly competitive world. We're all used to kind of getting up every day and having to fight to put a little food on the table. Not in an unfriendly manner necessarily, but I'm sure everyone else, the colleagues on the panel, can speak to the fact that sometimes it does get ugly. But come March 15th, every piece of that was set aside. People who had differences, don't worry about those right now, because we're literally all fighting against the same enemy that you can't see to secure the future for all of us.
From the side, it's really a massive support group. If there's anything that makes you feel a little better about the shitty situation, is that other people are also in shitty situation. I know it's messed up to say that, but it takes a little off everyone's shoulders, knowing that, you know, everyone is feeling the same pain. And like I said earlier, so many venues don't have the resources, don't have the ability to call Julie or have the personal relationship with agents and managers to get that kind of inside information. So anyone who's ever been on these calls, and I've been on both organization calls, you could see in people's eyes, they're just very, very thankful to get this inside information, because most venues are not in major markets. Most promoters don't have the relationships to be able to get a little more insight on what's going on. And for most members, that's really what it's for.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper than therapy. And last part of your question, Michelle, there has been a ton of state and local organizing that has been born out of NIVA. NIVA is a national organization, but it has, we have weekly local organizer calls at a group for people who were either organized locally pre-COVID and want to help share what they already knew. Civil, the Chicago Independent Venue League, Austin, a couple of these markets had organized years ago and have a lot that they're willing to share, which has been hugely helpful. Most were not organized, but I think there are 8 or 9 cities now who have formed their own organizations through this and through the support of other NIVA members who help them get it off the ground. It's been awesome to see that.
That's really cool. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
If there aren't any more questions, I want to thank the panelists for their time. Even though we're under COVID, everyone is extra busy, and I appreciate you contributing your time to this discussion topic. This will be reposted. The video of this will be reposted on YouTube for further review. And with that, you'll have kind of background links to each panelist. So thank you guys for being here, and till next time.